Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. Been a while since we've had Derek Piper on the podcast, so let's get caught up with everything Illini hoops, and we got a lot to catch up on. Nothing huge like the Matthew Meyer commitment the last time we had you on, Derek, but a lot of little things we want to catch up on. You've been out on the AU circuit here recently. You were at Rockford to see Chester Frazier and Jeff Alexander. Catch us up the last 2 weeks. What's been happening outside of taking care of baby Cade in the Piper household?
It's nice to get out of the house a couple of times. You know, it's good and refreshing and appreciative of my wife. And I can just kind of insert that for the rest of, Cade's life. So, we're a little sleep deprived, but, I feel like if there's a Facebook status for Dads of America, that would just be the consistent, a little sleep deprived, but we're doing good. So, but yeah, great to get back on the road and see a lot of these guys on the EYBL circuit. I hadn't got a chance until this spring to do that. So getting more familiar with some of these 2023 targets. Of course, anytime you get a chance to see that loaded Mean Street 16U and Nogis and James Brown and Merez Johnson, that was fun to watch them as well. And yeah, getting out to Rockford for the Illini tailgate tour and talking to Chester and Jeff and Josh Whitman and just kind of getting the vibe as this basketball program heads into summer workouts and what they're saying and everything. So there's an excitement and a buzz. And as we talked about all offseason, it's pretty warranted, I think.
I would imagine Rockford, the people there, pretty pumped about Illinois basketball, right? I would imagine that's the overall buzz there.
Yeah, they're pretty fired up. Now, they want to know about football. They're still – Josh Whitman was trying to say, hey, we got to sell out the homecoming game. I know that was a big thing for him at that event, but they like talking hoops for sure. They're definitely intrigued by what the roster is going to look like, what the jump Coleman's going to make is, Dane Danger, how he looks, and, of course, Matthew Meyer, Terrence Shannon Jr., and just how it all is going to piece together. And Ty Rodgers is a big buzz now. I mean, not only within the program, but everybody on the outside saying, hey, yeah, that dude's pretty good.
Yeah, I want to get right to that, Derek. Later on in this podcast, I'm going to ask you about the biggest question marks because we've talked all about the positives in this offseason. But now as we see this roster come together, we compare it to other Big Ten rosters that have question marks. Let's talk about some of those later on in the podcast. We'll talk about what you saw on the recruiting trail. But let's start this off with some quick hitters. And one of those is Ty Rodgers, making Team USA, starting for Team USA, the U18s at the America's Cup down in Mexico. What do you think that says about Ty Rodgers and his development, as well as what his role could be immediately for Illinois? Because he's playing with some of the guys who are going to be lottery picks at this time next year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The fact that he's playing with guys who are expected to go to college and make an impact right away. I think that it says something about the skill to his game, the value he has as a role player. And I think that anyone would tell you that when you're fielding that team, you're not going to just try to get the best 12 scorers in the country. You got to have somebody that's going to be a passer, a guy that's going to be a defender, and someone that's going to rebound. And I think that just the way that he plays his role, he's done it throughout his high school career. He showed that with USA basketball, and it's going to translate to the next level as well. So he's got some parts to his game, and just with his physicality and with his maturation on the physical side, it's going to make him be able to make an impact in some form or fashion in the Big Ten. So I know that we've talked a lot about the way that he looks. I mean, he looks like that Michigan State guy that is going to come in. And yeah, for him to – I know the competition wasn't great when you're playing those games and USA's up 60 or 80 or whatever it is. But some of the plays, of course, the behind the back and one was just spectacular. It's already a GIF on Twitter that tells you how good of a play that was. Had a huge block. There was just, you see the effort plays too. Like he had a rebound as he's going out of bounds and flips it underneath the basket for a guy for a score. So he's just going to bring a lot of different things to the table, and maybe even more impressive than some of the parts of the actual games is just making that team, starting on that team, knowing again who you were going against at that training camp. So a lot of respect for what he's done there. And now the Ty Rodgers hype train is full steam ahead. Of course, I mean, whenever that happens, you can imagine that's the case, but there is a lot to be excited about with him.
When I went and saw him this past year, I was raving about it. I just loved everything about him. He had a bunch of turnovers when he played Kenwood, but he just made so many winning plays. And the one thing I didn't like about him was he was too unselfish. But that I think you could eventually figure out. But he just makes, I mean, there's so much effort, so much intensity, great defense, great size, great skill for a guy that's 6'6", 200 pounds. And I think is only going to get stronger really, really quickly. So just fits into any roster, in my opinion, Derek. Now, some people are asking, does he get enough respect? He's a top 50 prospect, right? Joe Hendrickson was battling is Ty Rodgers, Jaden Shooter, Braden Huff, the top players in the state. That's a player going to Gonzaga and Duke, by the way. So I think he's gotten his due respect. He makes the Team USA team, but I think his value is that he's so moldable. Like he can play on any team. He's a star of his high school team, AAU team, but also can play at this level. Reminds me of Adam Miller and Ayo Dosunmu, the role he's playing on Team USA. And I think that's a great sign of a guy that can come in and know his role, play his role well as a freshman. So some people are asking me, does he start? I don't think he needs to make a big impact on this team, but I have no doubt he's going to make a big impact.
Yeah, I fully agree. I don't think he needs to start right off the bat, but also I think he will be in the mix to contend with an RJ Melendez and push Coleman Hawkins, because as a guy that can slot into different spots, and it makes sense that those returners would get kind of the benefit of the doubt as we fill out this starting five projected wise. But RJ still has, I mean, he's had flashes in college, but is still going to have to take that next jump and play into a bigger role. And look, Ty's going to come in and battle him. I think it's going to be great to watch those guys battle, to know that you're going to have the depth, regardless of who starts. And Brad Underwood, whenever we meet with him later this month, we'll say, he'll get asked inevitably, who's going to be your starting five? And he's going to say, I don't care, as you guys know, if you know me. But yeah, he's going to be someone that will be on the floor. I think if he's in that second rotation, you feel really good about him coming in and making an impact. And then, yeah, once again, can just slide into so many different spots. The fact that Brad's going to trust him at the defensive end. And if you got to have someone, we've talked a lot about not having a lot of point guard depth, at least in terms of pure point guards. He's someone that you can run offense through, and would be someone that if he has the ball, off a rebound, can push it in transition and do some different things. So there's a lot to be excited about, just kind of who he's going to be right away. And the jump shot is the key. I think it's the key for, you're going to hear some murmurs of, is Ty going to be here long term at Illinois? Is he going to be a two and done, or some are even going to venture and say, could he be a one and done? The jump shot has to come along. I don't see him as a one and done. I think that beyond that, we got to see him be able to make some perimeter jump shots. And I think it could play into how much he's going to be on the floor as a freshman too, whether he be a starter or whatnot. But he's going to play because he has a lot of value in a lot of different areas.
As much NBA as you watch, Derek, you got to be able to shoot in that league to be a high draft pick. All right, Merez Johnson, 2024 commit. He also gets a Team USA invite to training camp for the U17 team. Derek, I'll just say this is a pretty good sign when you have Rodgers, Dosunmu, Miller, all of a sudden, all these guys get invited to Team USA. I think that's a pretty good sign for Illinois, but also for Merez Johnson, who another player I really liked, because sometimes you see the guys who are front court pieces that get by with talent and talent alone when they're younger, and they might struggle once they get at a higher age, where, hey, you're around a lot of players who are similarly long and talented. Merez Johnson brings intensity all the time. And I thought when I saw him, he's got some things he needs to hone skill-wise when it comes to shooting and all that. But effort, intensity, defense, rebounding, he brings it. So what do you think of him, going to Team USA through training camp?
It's a great accomplishment for him. It's very deserving the way that he's performed. And I saw him in Louisville, his first game there. I think he had 15 points and 14 rebounds. I mean, a guy that's just an animal on the glass. The way that he brings that intensity, the athleticism is something you just can't teach when he's 6'8" and that's strong and that's just quick twitch, athletic, and plays with motor like you were talking about. You'd rather have it that way, where you got to add skill to that guy, versus you got a guy that's skilled and you're trying to make him more athletic, or just something that he probably can't be naturally. So I think as time goes on, he can hone in that side of the floor, offensive skill set, he's shown some flashes. Like he's shown some mid-range jumper. He's shown an ability to make a move inside. It's just about being more consistent with it, being more fluid with it. But he's one of the top prospects, a top 50 prospect in the class, and has potential to rise if that offensive skill and polish comes along later in his career. He's still got 2 years of high school basketball left, so still a lot of time for that to play out. And I know the staff sees him kind of in that Moussa Diabate mold, just that type of player. And Moussa ultimately, not to say they're going to be the same player, but Moussa was a top 20 prospect at the very end of his high school career going into Michigan. And I think that is potentially on the table for Mraz. If it all comes together, he could be pushing that 5-star range. But right now, to be going to USA basketball with his teammate James Brown, I mean, those guys playing together more and more is probably a good thing, especially when you think about recruiting and those guys are going to be teaming up at the next level. They're playing St. Rita, Mean Streets, and now USA basketball together. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll bring that up a little bit later because there's another target in that class who was also playing with them with a lot of these things. One more big scheduling note here, Derek. We're already going to the Roman main event. I know you and I are pumped about going to Vegas. And now I believe you are going to Madison Square Garden in New York to see Illinois take on Texas. So you already have 2 of Baylor, Virginia, and UCLA on the non-conference schedule. Now you add Texas in the Jimmy V Classic. You got a Big Ten ACC Challenge game. Don't know if they'll be in the Gavitt tip-off games, but more than half the Big Ten teams are. Man, it's a loaded up schedule. But what do you think of playing Texas this year?
When Joey and I were driving to Rockford, I thought that he'd pull over and say, "All right, this is where we duke it out for the chance to go cover that game." But it didn't. It came up, but we didn't get to that stage of it. But it's going to be really exciting to see what you look at Bart Torvik right now and analytics side, if you're not familiar. And these are 2 projected top 15 teams. Texas didn't live up to the hype last year, had a lot of talent, really got aggressive on the transfer portal, and still have Timmy Allen from Utah and Marcus Carr and some talented freshmen as well. So that's going to be a really talented team, and we'll see.
Hunter, Iowa State transfer as well.
Yeah, from Iowa State, who was a big-time transfer, and him being in that backcourt mix now is going to be a great challenge.
2 transfers we mentioned last year. Remember Christian Bishop for a minute, and Dylan Disu was a guy that I think Illinois looked into at one point. So yeah, a lot of talent there down for Chris Beard.
It's unfortunate we're missing out on Trey Mitchell and whatever suit his stepfather or whatever, Tony Bergeron, I'll just call him by his name, would have worn to that game, not on the staff, but in the stands, maybe just in case anybody needed an assistant. He could fill in that role. But yeah, to have another early challenge, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how prepared Illinois is for that. Talent-wise, I think that they're going to be up to the challenge. It's just how are things meshing early on, how are your freshman guards playing. But those are the type of games that, I mean, Brad Underwood has said it year after year. I want to challenge our teams early because we'll be better for it in the long run. But of course, if you are able to win a game like that, if you're going to be successful at the Roman main event, that's stacking quad 1 wins and getting your resume right for a good position in the NCAA tournament, and also boosting your ranking. And I think that it's just going to be really entertaining for the fans to see that kind of matchup, that kind of stage, and then I mean, you don't get on Jimmy V Classic in that game unless you've been successful, unless you've arrived back into that national scene, and that's definitely a highlight national game.
I don't want to look over Missouri either after adding Isaiah Mosley, right? Like they could be a lot better this year because I think they got a coach in Dennis Gates who's going to get talent to Missouri. So it's going to be interesting. And again, throughout the records in that game. So we're tested right away with a new look team. We'll talk more about that coming up later in this podcast, Derek, because it could be a concern. Last one I want to get to here quickly is Jacob Grandison, man. If you're a good veteran player and you enter the transfer portal, you're going to have blue bloods knocking on your door. And Grandison's list of 8 was really, really impressive. Reportedly on a Duke official visit here recently. Kentucky has shown interest. Michigan, I think he'd be a great fit for Michigan as well. I think this just speaks right to Jacob Grandison. Everybody needing a veteran who can shoot threes at extremely high clip.
Definitely. I know that he's someone that is willing to play a role. We know that Jake's pretty unselfish, We know that he's experienced, like you said, can shoot the three, can make really good decisions as a passer. And he's now won at a high level at Illinois and was part of and a key to Illinois winning basketball. I think he can do that for somebody else. And we know the stat of, I think, 14-2 in that 2020-2021 season after he became a starter, and then the rest of the way really helped Illinois flip a switch there. And now, I mean, Duke has added last year, Theo John, and they even got Ryan Young this year from Northwestern. But I think that Jake would make a bigger impact than a Ryan Young would. But I think it makes sense. Duke's been we know they're going to bring in that class of five-star freshmen, and they're going to have the youth and someone who can be a veteran and someone that can be steady and solid and just do all the things that Jacob Grandison does. It makes sense. It makes sense why big-time programs would be involved with him. And I know that people around here are going to wish Jake the best and be appreciative of what he did for Illinois. And I think it just ultimately makes sense for both sides now with the pieces that Illinois has added and the commitment to playing guys like Coleman and RJ Moore and Ty, and then for Jake to go find an opportunity in college. And I think throughout the offseason, we wondered, is he going to go play overseas and what's that going to look like? But it seems like, based on taking this visit to Duke and who else is involved, that he's going to have some pretty good suitors, and we'll be seeing Jake on a prominent basketball team going into next year as well.
Maybe we get a rematch in the ACC Big Ten Challenge 2 years ago. Let's go to Cameron Indoor this time. We weren't allowed in there last time. But yeah, I think it speaks to where Illinois is at in the program. But I think this also speaks to, Derek, this is the good side of the transfer portal, right? A team can move on, add pieces. They didn't know if Jacob Grandison was going to come back. I'm sure they would have welcomed him with open arms in April. But then they had Terrence Shannon, Matthew Meyer, and a good thing happens for Jake. Might have a chance to play at Duke, Kentucky, or Michigan. So really, really good for him. All right, Derek, you were just on the Louisville circuit for or down in Louisville for the AAU circuit. Just give me your biggest takeaway, biggest name, biggest interest, guy who you saw, thing you heard. What was the biggest takeaway from Louisville?
I would say for me, it was, and we've still tried to figure out who the biggest priorities are in the 2023 class, and Illinois still is looking at a roster this year that has a lot of guys who can come back. Outside of Matthew Meyer, you don't have anyone that's automatically gone in terms of eligibility. Now, Terrence Shannon would need to get a free COVID year and want to do that. I think the expectation is that he's probably going to leave. So Brad Underwood and his staff are still trying to figure out, what do we need? How many spots are we going to have? Do we want to take certain guys versus having options in the portal at the very end of it? But Amani Hansberry, the guy from the East Coast, Washington, D.C. area, versatile forward, 6'9". And look, we talk about versatility. We talk about being able to play multiple positions, and that being a big key for Illinois going forward. He really fits into that. Chester Frazier's been on him, and I think Illinois now has turned up the heat with him. I was just so impressed with he does a lot of Ty Rodgers type things, like in terms of being a bigger bodied guy that can play with the ball in his hands. He was grabbing rebounds and pushing up the floor. He was playing insanely hard defense. I mean, to compete possession after possession in AAU ball is very rare. You don't see a guy challenge every shot. You don't see guys dive on the floors for loose balls. That was what he was bringing to the table. So Penn State, I mean, in terms of being a guy that's a 3-star right now, Penn State's prioritized him. They've been in a very good position. But Illinois has seen him as someone that's a really good fit and someone that has a pretty high ceiling as he puts things together. So they're going to be more involved. Villanova offered prior to Jay Wright retiring. They're still involved. But Illinois is going to try to get an official visit, whether it be this month or in the fall. And I was just really impressed with what he showed. And overall, the trend is Illinois looking for wings or forwards, guys in that 3-4 mix, because they're thinking Meyer's probably gone, Meyer is gone, Shannon's probably gone, and then RJ or Coleman could have the potential to have a breakout year and go pro, or maybe it doesn't work out for one of those guys and they don't get the opportunity they want and they move on. So I think that's kind of what they're looking for, and that's really the focus versus maybe adding a guard or even big man is still a question. Who's going to really emerge as that guy they want to really push for?
It's interesting there. I don't think they planned this, but it seems like every year's kind of changing. Like here's guards, here's wings, here's front court. Like it's kind of going that way, and it's not a bad way to build a roster here, but because it's working out for them. But interesting, the front court and wing definitely seems like those priorities in that class. How about 2024, Derek? You mentioned James Brown along with his teammate Merez Johnson, but they have a new high school teammate and longtime AAU teammate Nogis Ujusetis. I said that probably wrong, but Nogis is a long shooter out of Chicago area. Seems like Brown and Nogis are kind of the guys that they're going after. And hey, can this be the next crew of teammates? You know, thinking back to the Peoria Manual guys back in the day, that kind of are the next wave that take the program to another level.
That'd be one heck of a get when you think about those three all top 50 prospects right now in the 24/7 rankings for 2024. And I was thoroughly impressed with Nogis. I've seen him before, but it had been a little while. And man, he got nicked up a little bit towards the end of the weekend, so he didn't play a whole lot. But early in the weekend, his shot making was incredible. His ability to make shots from three. I think that you talk about Jaden Shoot and being one of those high-level shooters coming from the state. It's a high bar to put him in that conversation, but I think at this point in his development, I would say at least it's similar with the way that he can fill it up from three, and he's more advanced off the dribble right now than Shoot was at this point in his career. And I know that Lon before radio, I've been talking a lot about Nogis recently. It's like, who do you comp him to? And I'm not always the best with comps, but could he be a Nick Stauskas type of guy that is someone that can really shoot it, someone that is a better athlete than you'd probably imagine? I know we usually say that about white guys that maybe don't have the, I don't know, aren't crazy bouncy or just maybe not look it, but he's 6'4". He's got a decent amount of length to him. He can finish in transition with dunks and whatnot, and just a pure scorer and someone that is a killer out there. I mean, he was lighting it up and fearless, and he's really exciting. And James Brown with 6'9" and very skilled inside, and I think he's got great touch. I think he's got great footwork, and can he expand his game a little bit more with a jump shot? But those guys with Merez were all at State Farm Center when Illinois was cutting nets and hoisting the Big Ten title trophy. And I know that certainly made an impression, and Merez is trying to get both of those guys.
And you look at his offer list, Derek, it's Illinois, Maryland, and this was Danny Manning as the head coach. I think when he was offered, and DePaul. Like that seems like a pretty good spot that Illinois has had him on campus multiple times, got a teammate committed in state. And you think about these kids now, Derek, they've probably been paying attention to college basketball for just a couple years, and Illinois has been pretty dang good. That's what happens, right? All of a sudden, they're thinking about Illinois when they think of college basketball.
Yeah, it's a little different than some of these recent classes who hadn't seen Illinois be good in a while. I mean, you think about Kylan Boswell growing up in Champaign, and it's like, do I want to play for Illinois? But now, like you said, some of these guys that may not pay attention as much to college until they start getting recruited or until they start really looking at programs. And Illinois has been very good. Illinois now has a Big Ten title trophy, Big Ten tournament title trophy, and they're seen as a winner now. So, yeah, and I think with the offer list, you always wonder, it's like, okay, our staffs around the country just so focused, which it happens. Sometimes it just gets so focused on this next class, the 2023 class, that they don't send out a ton of offers or not dialed into 2024 already? Or is it the case that they see Nogis as someone, Illinois was his first offer, he's visited there a bunch, Merez is recruiting him. Do we not even bother because we think he's going to Illinois? I think there's a chance that that's the case, and we'll see if Illinois can close it sooner than later. And as it plays out, if he's going to stay open and he's going to continue to play like this, I mean, he's going to be a pretty big time prospect.
All right, Derek, give me one more thing, whether it's another target people should be paying attention to in 23, 24, or anything else from the recruiting trail.
I think Trent Pierce in 2023 from Oklahoma, who recently made the move to Arizona Compass Prep, is one to watch. 6'8", 6'9" guy that can really shoot it. They want shot making in 2023, a guy on the perimeter that has length and can shoot. And I know that Asa Thomas earlier on in the process was kind of a big priority out of the state. Just seems that things have cooled there between Illinois and him. And Trent Pierce is a higher ranked prospect, and I think that Oklahoma State, Illinois are kind of his big offers. Texas Tech as well. They came in this spring. Illinois is going to try to get him on campus, and he's certainly one to watch. And yeah, I think 2024. It's still. I'll give some credit to Carlos Harris too, the point guard on Main Streets out of Curry. I think that he's a guy that you kind of monitor going forward. I know Illinois has ZZ Clark already committed into that class, but he's someone that can really get downhill, can really play great on-ball defense. Illinois is his first time major offer. He's a guy that really impressed in Louisville as well.
All right, Derek, let's move on to the current roster. And they could add one more piece here, but I want to ask you about the big question marks. But one of those right now is who's going to be the 12th scholarship player on the roster. I think we're looking at a front court piece and potentially the 9th, 10th, or 11th player on this team, right? I think we know what the core of this team is going to be. So what do you expect with Illinois to add to their front court here this late in the process? No Pete Nance, right?
No Pete Nance. No, I don't see that one happen. I know the questions still get asked periodically about, oh, Pete Nance, still any chance he's available? But no, I don't see that one for Illinois. But I think someone that can play in a backup role at the 5 is something that's been of intrigue for them. Just kind of the route they've been choosing. Jalen Butts, transfer out of Western Kentucky, who was at DePaul and actually played very well at DePaul as a junior there. And Tim Anderson, of course, was on staff at that time, and he put up 10 points, 5.5 rebounds per game as a starter. I think that was back in 2019, 2020. Then he sat out 2021, then went to Western Kentucky and dealt with a foot injury and wasn't very productive. But he's an older guy that can play some backup minutes at 6'9" and has some experience defending 5s. Now, those bigger 7-footers, is he going to get stops against Hunter Dickinson or Trace Jackson Davis? I wouldn't necessarily expect that. But so there's an obvious connection. And I think Illinois, if they really pushed for him, would probably be in a good spot at this point. But it sounds like international big is a little bit bigger of a priority right now over Butts, and that would be intriguing.
You lose Bosman's Verdonk, you bring in another international big. That's what happens.
Right. I mean, you got to have one. You had Georgie, you got EBV, Matisse. Yeah, we got to bring up. But I think the standard of what that player is going to look like has continued to elevate going forward. But the staff's been pretty low key about that, those pursuits. I think that there's a competitive advantage, especially, and we saw it with BBV. Like, I think he announced and we had no idea who he was, and we started watching highlights. So there's a competitive advantage to kind of stay low key on those things, so other teams don't get tipped off of, oh, this guy's going to come to the United States and play. So that's one route to kind of monitor and see. And I'm not saying that a commitment's necessarily imminent or anything, but they're in the mix for a big there, and I think that's an option that we could see emerge here within the next month.
Derek, I think both of you and I agree. This team now has talent level to be an expectation of another top 5 finish in the Big Ten. How it all plays out, I'm not sure, but there are so many question marks atop the Big Ten that I feel like there's like 10 teams that could potentially be in the mix for a top 5 team. But what is your biggest question mark for this team? Because we know they're long, they're athletic, they're talented. They got as much depth, I think, as they had in a long time, especially when you go 2 through 4. But personally, what's your biggest question about this team?
I was watching your guys' daily dish earlier this week with you and Joey, and I think you both bring up great points. You talking about everything meshing and guys stepping up into bigger roles, and Joey, of course, with the guard depth at point guard in terms of pure point guards. And I think that relying on some guys that are still unproven, I think that factors in freshman guards, because we've seen high-profile, talented freshmen come into high major basketball. It's not even just the Big Ten, and not really be all that efficient. I think that when you talk about freshman guards and efficiency, they don't usually go hand in hand. You think about Io's freshman year. It took a while for him to get going. Brandon Paul. Just on down the line, even last year, Max Christie didn't have the type of season that people were really expecting. A guy that was a prolific shooter in high school and shot below 35% from three. So Sky Clark, Jaden Epps, are those guys going to be efficient? Do they hit a freshman wall? Do they struggle out of the gates? How does that look for them? And then I think that Dane Danger at the 5 is a guy that, is he going to be the opposite of Omar Payne in terms of the offseason hype, the guy that was previously ranked, very highly, but then it clicks for him now in a new role and now playing at Illinois. And even behind him, we talk a lot about RJ. We talk, even European Ty Rodgers. I mean, Rodgers never played in college, obviously, and RJ has still played sparingly. So I think that those guys being in different roles, even Coleman, like being in more of a marquee role, is something that I wonder about as it plays out. I think it's very fair to then say, how does it mix with Meyer and Shannon and just a whole bunch of new faces? I think that's a great point that you make there. And it might ultimately, I could definitely see that being the biggest concern. But I would say we always look at the down the road, and would freshman guards be a hindrance ultimately in an NCAA tournament situation if that's what you're relying on and you don't have a veteran primary ball handler? But there's a lot to like.
They've had him the last couple of years and it hasn't worked out. So it's like, I don't know. And that'll all have to play out. I think it's going to be a little ugly at times early, but it also could look pretty early. You know what I mean? Like when it hits, I think this could look, even in the non-conference, like Ohio State had a really weird non-conferences. All those new pieces were kind of figuring it out. They lost to Xavier, lost to Florida, but they also beat Seton Hall, beat Duke, beat Wisconsin early on. Like I think you're going to see an up and down team early on until they figure out role identify, right? Like I think role identification is going to be kind of ugly at times early on in the season, but once they figure it out, once Underwood figures it out, I think it could be really fun.
Definitely. I think that even goes into you're late in the shot clock and who you running a play for, who's going to be the guy to step up and take that shot. And now that you just have, I mean, in the past, you knew where guys were going to be because they had so much time playing together. And now how does that look like in a new play style for Illinois? You're going to play fast. And I think also, while you do have Meyer and Rodgers and Shannon could probably do it. And they're even saying Dane Danger could push the ball off the floor. But when you're going to play a fast style of play, that does put even more of an emphasis on your guards taking care of the ball and being able to make the right decisions. So can your freshmen be very solid and be able to make the right decisions and take care of the ball? And I think also you're still wondering about Sky Clark's health. I think that we're all hopeful that he's going to be 100%. And I'm not saying he's not going to be, but we have to see that actually happen for him. And if there is kind of a hitch in his recovery, or if he's not as explosive right off the ACL. I mean, we saw DeMonte Williams come in as a freshman off the ACL and didn't really have the same pop in his legs right away. Is that going to be something that he has to deal with? So there's a lot of things to kind of wait and see. I mean, a lot of questions, but also a lot of things to be excited about. I mean, just the way they're going to be able to defend, their versatility, and all of that. So it's going to be fascinating to hear what's coming out of the gym this summer. And then obviously, as we get into the fall, really see it with our own eyes.
Yeah, because I mean, other great teams deal with this every year, right? Duke, Kentucky, Michigan in recent years has dealt with this every year. And usually talent finds a way to win out. So I'm not concerned like, oh my gosh, this team's not going to make the tournament. It's just, I think it could be bumpy along the way. And somebody's not going to be happy with their role, but that happens in really, really good programs where you're accruing talent like this. Derek Piper, thank you as always, man, for catching up on Illinois basketball. It has been a fascinating ride. And with the talent here in Champaign that Brad Underwood has accrued and all these different pieces and different style play, it's going to continue to be interesting as the offseason moves forward.
Always fun, man. And I'm glad you just divert your attention away from Tony La Russa for 30 minutes.
You had to do it.
Talk some basketball instead.
You know what? I get a couple random Cardinals fans saying, you don't deserve him. I'm like, listen, Tony La Russa is a Hall of Famer. He's an all-time great at what he's done. In 2022 for my White Sox, Not what I need, Derek. Not what I need right now. So appreciate the thoughts, and kudos to your Cardinals for just being really good again. Never gets old, huh?
We try. We just got swept by the Rays, but hey, we got
2
spoiled Cardinals
MVP
fan problems.
candidates.
Yeah.
Nicholas is back. You're fine.
Yeah.
All right.
We're rolling through it. It's good.
All right, DP. Thanks, man.
Anytime, man. See you.